Welcome to Muscle Maintenance with In Shape Fitness. I'm Coach Kim. Thank you so much for joining me for today's podcast, which I am calling Vital Organs and Energy Level. I'm calling it that because today is National Grouch Day. As I broadcast today, it is Monday, October 15th, and yes, October 15th, bizarrely enough, is called National Grouch Day. And I think there are a couple of other national holidays, particularly the National Mushroom Day and it's National Cheese Curd Day, which I find very interesting that those two things are on the same day in conjunction with National Grouch Day. But what I'm hoping to do with today's podcast is to give you some reasons to elevate your energy level and your spirit through exercise movements without obviously any equipment, as we never use equipment in these podcasts, and with some fun stories that will hopefully get you all psyched up for the week. It is the middle of October. We're in New York City where I'm broadcasting and where I see clients face to face and talk to people in companies. We're getting into that interesting time during the year, the calendar year, where it's Halloween coming up, and that means a lot of candy is sitting around. In fact, I sat in a school board meeting just last week, and the superintendent of our school district brought this giant bucket of Halloween candy in for one of our meetings. And of course, people are just sort of grabbing pieces of candy and munching on them, and sort of absent-mindedly, the next thing you know, you've eaten like 10 pieces of, sort of those small little candy bars, or, a handful of like sort of chewy, sweet things, fruity things. And that is okay, but obviously it's not good for your blood sugar level. It's not good for your energy level because you crash. It's definitely not good if you are trying to lose weight and or stay healthy for something else that's getting ready to happen in New York City, which is the New York City Marathon. And one of the main things I try to explain to clients that I work with who run is that a lot of the sugary treats that seem like the craving seems so heightened during the heavy training period is it's normal to have the cravings for something, but what's not so great is that the sugar suppresses some of the components in your body that help stave off infections. And so if you have a lot of candy and stuff that's wasteful sort of stuff going into your system at the same time that's how you're rewarding yourself, that you're depleting your body through heavy amounts of exercise, you could open your system up to a greater probability for infection, for catching a cold or a bug of some sort. So we're going to get started with a couple of movements related to your general spirit and your overall body chemistry by focusing on compound movements a little bit here and talking about how just a few simple things can really boost your sort of mental state, getting you out of that Grouch Day sort of state, if you will, for Monday. And of course, today's Monday. So it's always really nice to kick off things in the week with a really good attitude. And exercise is one of the best ways to stave off that sort of grouchiness, stave off the sedentary sort of mentality and the inertia that sets in, especially as the weekends are cooler and you might be inside a little bit more. So stand up really tall if you're not standing, and you can do this in the office setting. You don't have to be in a gym setting to do a little bit of stimulating exercise. The whole business of exercise experiences in a big box gym or even in a fancy studio is designed to spend money, for you to spend money. It is not necessarily designed for you to have a sustainable health plan, for your self-care to really succeed in terms of your ability to maintain a level of metabolism and maintain a level of energy and, of course, body composition through your adult years and into your into middle age, through parenting, and into older ages, of course, as well. So standing up really tall, we always start with a postural systems check. We should do that again today. That is your opportunity, and you should do this once an hour if you can, even if you're sitting. Take your iPhone or your whatever phone you use, on your computer, set your Google Calendar for the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour. 5 minutes to just think about where your body is in space. It helps recalibrate your output in terms of your work. It helps your posture, it helps your breathing capacity, and it stimulates ancillary muscles in your body, especially if you stand up and you focus on squeezing the muscles in your legs, making sure that you're pressing into the floor with all 4 corners of your feet, that your feet are straight, and that your glutes are squeeze a little bit. You can tighten your tushy muscles a little bit and tuck in your tailbone in order to properly make sure that your pelvis is positioned properly, and zip up your tummy muscles. Then finally push those shoulders back so that your chest muscles are open. That enhances your ability to respirate properly. And then make sure that your head is positioned right on top of your neck so that your ears and your shoulders line up. Because if your head is craning forward because you're always looking at a screen, whether it's on a device and you're looking down, or whether you're sitting at a chair and you're kind of like sort of gazing forward and your neck is kind of tilted at a forward bend, that is not good for your neck muscles. That's where that sort of stress conjunction is with the improper mechanics of your anatomy, where your center of gravity is shifted, and then you end up with all these weird back pains. You end up with lots of added issues that relate to your postural deviations, and you really want to make sure that you minimize that in our office sort of environments. So now, if you have done all the postural systems check stuff, the next thing that you should be thinking about is elevating your heart rate a little bit. And elevating your heart rate a little bit is so much easier than it seems like it should be. You don't need a treadmill. You don't need a bike machine or an actual bike. You don't need an elliptical machine. You can just squat all the way down, put your hands on the floor, walk your feet back. You do not need to jump. Walk your feet back. Then walk your feet back into the squatted position. And as you stand up, make sure you press your heels into the floor and squeeze your glutes. Keep your back straight. Remember, when you hip hinge, your body goes straight down and you continue gazing forward. It's bending over and putting your head down that pulls on your back and can cause issues with your vertebra. You don't want to do that. You want to squat all the way down with a straight back. Now, these are called burpitas in my world because that's the name that I gave them to help people sort of digest the notion of doing burpees. I love burpitas because, number one, because your body is interacting with gravity, your heart rate automatically elevates. And if you can elevate your heart rate for 2 to 3, maybe 4 minutes every single morning, that is metabolic stimulation that will translate to a stronger day, a healthier day, better output at work, and certainly, you can get rid of that National Grouch Day business. So you squat all the way down, you walk your hands or walk your feet back. You could also do the opposite, which is the walkout. We call it walkout push-up or walkout plank, where you squat down and instead of moving your feet, if you'd rather walk your hands out and then walk your hands back, you can stand all the way up. Same thing. The only really important component in terms of there are several important things, but one of the main important things is for you to make sure that you're getting onto the floor properly. That if you are bending over, you bend correctly. You hinge at your hips. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there. You might be listening and you might have knee problems, and you might say to yourself, I don't have the ability to bend deeply through my knees. And okay, I get that part. So if that is one of the problems that you have, this is not an exercise for you. What you need to do is get down onto the floor safely and then spend the time on the floor moving around in plank position. Because the other component about the burpee or burpita or the walkout push-up or walkout plank, the thing that makes the exercise doubly effective is that you end up in the prone position. You end up on your hands and your legs, your feet or your knees, and you are having to ambulate in terms of that position. We're going back to the primal basics here. Your horizontal body position in relationship to the floor is a big deal. And the reason is because of the mechanics of the physics of the way that your body has to maintain its stability when you're on your limbs, as opposed to gravity, the load on your spine when you're standing erect on 2 feet. When you're down on the floor, you have to stabilize all of your vital organs, going back to this sort of notion of how our vital organs are so very important. First of all, you got to remember, vital organs, they're not made of plastic, they are made of muscle. So when you are exercising, when you are doing stuff that stimulates your body, you are helping all of your body, not just trying to slim down, not just trying to build muscle, but making sure that your vital organs, specifically your heart, obviously, and then your digestive system, which is also made of smooth muscle, it functions more effectively when it is utilized in exercise conditions. So when you're in plank and you're activating all of the layers of muscle in conjunction with their protection of your vital organs, they work with the ribs to protect all the space that is in your trunk, and your pelvis. So you have to be able to stabilize, and that is very difficult. It boosts your heart rate and thus your metabolism and your energy level. All right, now I want you to take a couple of seconds in child's pose. And if you've been doing, burpees, burpitas, walkouts, squats, as I've been talking up until now, sit in child's pose and stretch out your back a little bit. So with child's pose, you sit your butt on top of your heels. If you can do this, even if you're in the office setting, somewhere in the office, you ought to be able to do a child's pose. I know, and I haven't worked in an office for many, many, many years, but there are plenty of places. When I worked in offices, there was always a place where you can take off your shoes and squat down onto your butt and then drape your torso over your thighs with your hands straight out. Don't rest your elbows on the floor. You want to walk your fingers as far away from your body as possible in order to stretch out the top of the back and your shoulders, and then to just stretch that entire plateau of muscle tissue and fascia over your thighs, the top part of your back, which always needs that little extra stretch, because the next thing I want to do is a dynamic flexibility move. We call it dynamic dog, and it's just downward dog to upward facing dog, downward dog to upward facing dog. And everybody probably who has walked into a yoga studio has seen these two positions in motion. Doing them dynamically helps keep your heart rate elevated, but it also just provides a little more fluidity in terms of the movement between the extremes of the butt high up in the air, making a triangle and downward facing dog. And remember, when you go to downward dog, your legs should be straight. In fact, through the entire dynamic dog, your legs should not bend very much. If you have a slight bend in your knee, that's okay, but your knees should be pushed back, because one of the main benefits of downward facing dog is the ability to stretch out your hamstrings and your calves, as well as your back, of course. So you go from downward dog to upward facing dog and make that happen in a dynamic fashion. And this fluidity, it might make you feel even a little tiny bit lightheaded, because you're moving kind of quickly. You're disorienting yourself, discombobulating your equilibrium a little bit in terms of your vestibular system. That in and of itself is also really stimulating in terms of your overall sense of energy, your overall mental balance that you take into your workday. Now, the first thing that I do every morning, and I don't necessarily recommend this to you, but it is something to think about and maybe even look up a little bit. We have a page about the 5 Tibetans on our website called bodybyInshape.com. It is simply it's the first exercise of 5 exercises that spiritual Tibetan monks supposedly performed every single day. There's some question as to the validity of that account actually, but regardless, spinning around clockwise 21 times with your eyes open and your arms out to the sides is the first exercise that I do, and I do it every single morning, regardless of what else I might be doing in terms of exercise. So what does it do? It activates your vestibular system. It activates your equilibrium. And I know that, Crunch Fitness, Equinox, all the spin companies, all the ballet and the bar companies and the yoga studios, none of these, really giant fitness companies want to say to you that you can get by in terms of heavy duty exercise without going into their workout spaces and sort of sweating it out for an hour. I get that, but on a regular everyday basis, there is a huge, really understated and very significant amount of stimulation that can happen to you by simply breathing deeply, activating your sleepy body in the morning instead of just jumping into the shower, moving around a little bit and getting your blood flowing. The last thing I'll say, because I did want to get through this podcast session before the 20-minute marker ends, is that you want to think, I don't want you to become scientists in order to just understand your body, but there is some level of knowledge is good when it comes to understanding the ruse, really, I gotta say, the shysters that have made us all believe that we need to purchase gym experiences and then purchase extra apparel and all the fancy equipment. And then when we don't get it right, we purchase the interventions that will help alleviate the pain that's been caused by the way that we've had to live our lives. And a lot of these things can be staved off. They're small things, and so it takes a long time for you to develop a sustainable plan, but it can be done. And one of the main reasons that the science is important is because when you go to sleep at night and you lie down, even if you don't sleep that much, and if it's not great sleep, what happens to the capillary operation in your system? So, right, your circulatory system, it's your heart. You've got the main veins and arteries, the aorta, the vena cava. You've got your main tributaries headed out to your legs and your arms and the rest of your vital organs and your brain, obviously. And then the capillaries, those are the foot soldiers in your circulatory system. And that means also cellular respiration, nutrient transport, and fluid transport to all of the tissues in your body. There are millions upon millions of capillaries that, guess what? Once you stop moving, they close down. They close up shop. They're not just there. It's not like a sort of a never-ending flow of blood like you have through your veins and your arteries. Your capillaries are more like a faucet in your sink, in your kitchen or bathroom that has to be turned on in order for something to come out of it, which tells you then that from your fingertips, your toes, up through and including all of the specific tissues that are activated by exercise, you need to move them in order for those capillaries to switch on and to help build and sustain your metabolism throughout the day. So it's not just getting up and starting to move by getting into the shower. If you take the extra 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even a little bit less. On busy days, I might skip a couple of exercises and I just do something like 5 minutes, or if I oversleep or hit the snooze button or something. But regardless, you have the opportunity by just that one move that I suggested you do after you get all sort of warmed up and ready to go mentally, to get down on the floor and get back up off of the floor for just a 2 to 3 minute period of time. That will elevate your heart rate. Once your heart rate is elevated and sustained, you are on your way. So have a great rest of the day. Let me know if you have any questions or you need anything from me and or my team at bodybyInShape.com. And I will be back next week with another episode of Muscle Maintenance.